Gordon's up. He says, thank you very much again for the help you provide on Hump Days. You're welcome. He says, when setting up a multi-city local lead gen site, you have advised in the past to use subdomains of the main domain for each city instead of using a page under the main domain. When using pages, I know that the SEO juice can be spread among all the city pages, but when using subdomains, does the SEO juice spread among all the subdomains to help each one rank better, or does each subdomain stand on its own for SEO purposes? Well, it's a little of both, Gordon. Because again, a subdomain is treated as a separate entity by Google, right? But there is the parent domain being the root domain. So you can, the way I always looked at it was subdomains and other subdomains of the same root domain are called sibling domains, right? And the parent domain being the root. And so what happens is each one of the subdomains or sibling domains are their own standalone sites, which is good for protection purposes. And that's what we've talked about. That's the reason why I'd always done that. Now, it's funny because I really don't do anything spammy anymore, at least not to the actual money sites. So I could probably get away with just doing inner pages, but it's still you're still, and that it doesn't mean that what we do right now couldn't be considered spammy tomorrow, because we don't work for Google, right? And so even though I've never really had it, at least for several years now, I haven't had any issues with getting sites de-indexed or penalized. I've always kept using subdomains specifically to minimize risk, right? To reduce exposure, so to speak. Because as I've said before, if you put all of your location pages on the root, so they're inner pages, right? And if you catch a penalty against any one of those pages, it could pull the whole site down and all of your other location pages. Although, again, like I said, the methods that we teach, I haven't, knock on wood, they haven't created any penalties that I'm aware of for any of my own stuff, as well as any of our students, okay, that I'm aware of. And so you could probably get away with doing it on inner pages. For management purposes, that would be much easier, there's no doubt, because you'd have just one site to manage. That said, though, just keep in mind that that's putting all of your eggs in one basket. So if Google decides to take that basket, or destroy one of the eggs in that basket, it could very well hurt all the others as well. So back to the original question, a subdomain is kind of a standalone site in that if a subdomain was to catch a penalty for some reason or another, it would only affect that subdomain. The root would be left intact, remain healthy, and all of the other sibling domains or subdomains would also remain healthy, untouched, essentially, from that penalty that's been levied against that one subdomain. So it isolates any potential penalty problems. However, if you were to catch a penalty against the root domain, it would automatically apply to all of the child domains or subdomains. Does that make sense? So that's why I've done that in the past, was to always protect the root against all odds, right? Protect the root. And then if I was going to do anything spammy, it would be on a subdomain level. And that was specifically for that reason. However, what you can do is, and this is something I've actually been testing recently, but I don't have enough time passed to see. In fact, I just talked about this on the last mastermind webinar, so 13 days ago, actually, about how to use subdomains and the root domain in conjunction to kind of power it up. And I can't give away the method here, guys. I can't do that because it's kind of an extension of something that we teach in our paid courses. But there is a way to still use subdomains and use the root domain to kind of help power up the subdomains with inner pages without doing anything that could catch a penalty to your root. But again, as far as does the subdomains benefit each other? Yes, it may not be quite as a quick effect, or might not be as effective as inner pages. But here's the thing: every one of those subdomains are still attached to the root, right? So again, the root domain being the parent domain is going to benefit. Now, you guys know we don't care much about metrics. We stopped caring about proprietary third-party metrics several years ago. But let's just use one as an example, because a lot of you guys will understand it this way. Let's just use domain authority, Moz's metric, and page authority as an example, okay? When you have a domain authority, that's site-wide, including subdomains, right? So, for example, if you have a domain authority of 25 on the root, then your subdomains when you create a new subdomain, it won't automatically be 25. I don't think so, but it will benefit from the domain authority of the parent domain. And so what I have found over the years now that I've been developing these multi-location sites using subdomains is that at first, when you start like let's say you start off with 2 locations. So you've got the root domain and then 2 subdomains, each subdomain being for a different location. And then you start optimizing, doing what you do to get results. And then you add a 3rd location. Well, the 3rd location typically, according to my experience, will often start to get results faster than the first 2 did, because it's actually benefiting from some of the authority that has been accrued or, accumulated from the previous 2 subdomains and the root altogether, right? So as a whole, it's now that new subdomain is actually benefiting from the authority that has accrued from the previous 2 and the root itself, if that makes sense. So then you add a 4th subdomain and 4th location and a 5th and a 6th. And what happens is I start to see each new location that I add tends to respond quicker, get results faster than the previous one, because it's actually benefiting from the authority of the cluster, essentially. It's the root domain as well as its other siblings. So again, if you're doing just inner pages, you're probably going to get faster effect from that. But I found that, as you continue to build out additional subdomains, they kind of benefit or receive benefit from all of the previous subdomains as well. So they're at their birth point, right? The moment that you create that subdomain, it's really already has some inherent authority because of it being a subdomain of a root domain that has built authority or accrued authority, if that makes sense. So anyways, I can't get into any more further of that, honestly, because I would be giving away too much. Come join the mastermind and we'll tell you all about it. So Marco, do you want to comment on that at all, or Hernan?
No, just to validate a little bit what you're talking about on domains. We see that domains and subdomains. We see that when we do drive stacks and we add additional folders and files, right? The more you add, the more power that, as you say, accrues. And I call it power. I don't give a shit about domain authority or trust flows. I don't give a crap about any of that. It's power. And so the more that you do of whatever it is that you're doing inside the drive stack, the more power that you're pushing through, and the more power that ends up wherever it is that you got that drive stack aimed. That's why they work so well.
Yep.
And so the more work that you do inside them, the more keywords that you target, whether it's keyword plus location or server, whatever it is that you're doing, you do more of it inside your drive stack, and before you know it, I mean, it's just pushing tons of power wherever it is that you want to go. And we've seen people, right, from case studies that they even get empty folders to rank before anything else ranks. So it's crazy the amount of power that you can do in this method, whether you're doing it at the TLD and subdomain level or at the drive stack and G site level.
That's right.